from somebody they trust. So like the Sierra Club, just in the last few years, has just amazing stuff on their site about the environmental impact of factory farming. And I was like, whoa, what site am I on? You know, but it's like people who might not listen to an animal rights activist might listen to the Sierra Club. And whatever the issue is, whatever you're talking to someone, you know, like if you're gay, then find a gay, you know, a gay vegan, you know, to talk to your gay friends. And it's just important to speak to what people are already open to. I just found that that helps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, you found that on like the National Sierra Club
Yeah.
website?
You just look on.
Huge section on factory farming now.
Yeah. Is it 2 years now? Maybe a couple
I don't know.
years? Yeah, it was like a shock. You know, I was really surprised.
So they're taking a stand against it? Do I?
Yeah.
They're offering all the reasons why it's damaging to the environment.
Okay,
I don't know that the V word is in there.
yeah.
You know?
We've got a whole bunch of their posters, by the way, and I'll try and bring them in for tomorrow to put them at the Northwest Veg Table. So they have big posters on factory farming now, and they have some of the quotes out of the UN reports and things like that.
Yeah, and that's another thing. There's people that you can mention this recent United Nations report that, you know, just lambaste factory farming and the damage. But there's certain political people that if you mention the UN, they're like, you're now really giving them bad information. So you really have to, you know, it's one by one conversation all the time with the person in front of you. That's the most important person in your life, is the person right in front of you right now.
That's me. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes.
I was going to say also, always remember, even though sometimes it feels like an uphill battle, to always remember that truly you're not really alone, like you. You really have all of us in your corner. You just don't know it. Just because, you know, for instance, when you're dealing with these people that are saying the opposite of what you know and what you believe. So you're really not alone. There's tons of documentation, there's tons of people in your corner. We're all in your corner. And know that. And I think that's for all of us to know. Because sometimes when we're working on these issues individually or with a group setting, you know, sometimes the reason that you get down or you get overwhelmed or feel despair or whatever is because it's an uphill battle and you think you're doing it all by
Right.
yourself, but you're really not.
Right.
And focus on your achievements, you know, even though they may seem like baby steps.
Did anyone else have a question or comment? Yes.
I wonder what your thoughts were about, it seems the kind of, I feel like a lot of times, you know, I'm kind of checking out from society, like, oh, I'm not gonna buy that, I'm not gonna participate in that, I'm not gonna own stock in that, I'm not gonna, and what do you think is the effectiveness of that versus owning that and going to the meeting and saying, I'm a shareholder, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we just have to do what we can. And I said at the onset that we're not perfect. And, you know, hard as we try, we're not going to be able to eliminate all suffering from our lives. And, you know, do your best and try not to feel guilty when you eat a vegetable and you realize that maybe insects have been killed. Or, you know, if you're doing your research and you find that you're investing in a company that is using unfair practices or is, you know, Procter & Gamble or something like that, then, you know, use your own judgment, basically. I would, if it were me, I would say, you know, I'm backing out of this. I'm not going to be part of that. And I would speak up. I would let them know why. Because I think if you don't say something, yeah, what's the point? You know, if there's a company that you disagree with for whatever reason, and you say, I'm not going to do business with you anymore, you tell them why. And it's just, that's a huge, huge issue because there's so much. I have a 401k and I'm trying to track exactly who's getting this money, and because I don't want it to go to Procter & Gamble or companies that I detest. You know, I want it to be socially responsible. Yet when you approach socially responsible advisors, it's a little trickier. For me, that's been my experience. So I'm trying to, so it's my next phase of my life, is trying to make sure my money is being used, my invested money is being used better.
Well, if you find out, put it on a website or something, it's very complicated.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, anyone else?
Me.
Yes, Nettie.
I've changed the way I talk recently about this issue to people, and it's working really well. It disarms them from their reflexive, you care more about animals than you do people, or, oh, you're a fanatic. And I just constantly stress, like, compassion, nonviolence, gentleness, opposition to cruelty, and they immediately go, well, I believe in all those things too. And I just bring it back to that, like, if they say, oh, you're a fanatic, no, it's just compassion, it's just, and it's really worked well. So, yeah, just want to talk about
Good,
that.
good. Thank you. Okay. Oh, yes.
Well, whenever I bring up the whole being vegan, when people ask me, I feel like a lot of people get really defensive because they feel guilty about it in a way.
Good. I'm glad they feel it.
And so I'm just wondering, like, how to approach it. Not because I don't want to make people feel guilty. I just want them to like think about it and change. I feel like people get really defensive.
Well, I think if they're,
Guilty about it.
I think if they're defensive, they're getting the message. You know, they understand, and that may be just the first step. That they acknowledge, okay, my choices are maybe less humane than yours, if that's what they're feeling guilty about, or if that's why they're uncomfortable. If they're feeling uncomfortable because they think you're preaching to them, then that adds another layer of maybe complication. So I think that just live by example, but also make it about the animals. If you're in a situation where your veganism is brought up, be honest about it. But you don't have to tell people constantly, you know, you're wrong or you're bad or whatever. Just let them know what your choices are and why, and try to make it about compassion as much as possible, and just, you know, remind them that this is why you're doing it, and you don't have to beat them over the head with it, but you can talk about factory farming. Like I talked about that luncheon in Ohio, and when everybody had chicken, they asked me why I didn't eat it, and I didn't make a big deal about it. I just talked a little bit about how meat chickens are raised in a very short period of time, 45 days. Their bodies cannot cope. You know, their bones are brittle. They have all sorts of health problems, etc. And let them decide for themselves. Maybe they'll go home and think, well, that vegan was certainly an asshole, or whatever. But at least they're thinking about it. So I'm not so much concerned about what they think of me when it's in that type of situation. When it's a friend, it's a slippier slope because you know it's a social thing, and I would invite them over to your house for a nice vegan dinner, or take them to a vegan restaurant, especially if you live in Portland or in the area here. There's a lot of great vegan restaurants. I live in the Bay Area, so I'm really fortunate. There's a lot of great vegan restaurants there too. And you don't have to make it a big deal. Just say, hey, I want to share this with you. It's important to me, you're important to me, and we don't have to really talk about it. I just want to share it with you. I hope that helps.
Two things, Mark. First, when you're talking about chickens, somebody's saying, you care more about chickens than you do humans.
Mm-hmm.
You could throw in the environmental aspect of that too, that of course you have to feed all this stuff to the chickens.
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
get a little bit out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a whole other layer in that issue about why this lifestyle is more beneficial to human beings.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought it up very quickly when I quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who wrote that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.